Okay, welcome everybody. Welcome to another Equipment Zone training webinar. Really excited for this topic. The focus of today's webinar will be to review and optimize your settings when using Garment Creator 2. And that would be specifically today on dark garments or when using white ink with your Epson SureColor F2270. As you know, I'm thrilled actually, as you know, none of this would be possible if it was just up to me. So thank goodness I can introduce Roy Huseman. Roy, again, our lead technician and one of our wonderful trainers, is going to be guiding you today through this Garment Creator 2 series. This is the second in our series. Previously, we did something similar, but focused for white or light garments. Today's episode, as I mentioned, will be focused for dark garments and using white ink. So it's been a big opportunity for us to flex just a little bit. It's a new printer, it's new software, relatively new. And so this gives us the opportunity to share, to shine the light bright on what's possible. And I just got to brag on Roy for a second. He's probably one of a handful, maybe less than 4 or 5 people that I know that have this much experience, a tremendous amount of experience with Garment Creator 2 and with DTG printing, specifically with the Epson F2270. So you are in for a treat today. It will be a good ride. We're going to take a close look at the most important settings. Roy has promised me that he's got everything dialed in that's going to help us eliminate errors, help you increase your productivity, and also make sure that we can be as efficient as is possible. So the tricks of the trade, as well as avoiding mistakes. None of this would be possible without my good friend, Roy Huseman. Roy, I'm going to turn it over to you, my friend. Are you ready to rock and roll?
Yep, I sure am. Thank you, Jay, for the kind words. Anyway,
I speak the truth, my friend. I'm just speaking the truth. That's all.
yeah, no worries. Also want to thank everyone for attending today. Like I said, we'll get to some questions as we move forward and cover um, some of the items there. So I will be sharing my screen as I do that. I think Jay is taking over and sharing his screen right now, but that's fine. The key things I just want to point out for you is when it comes to dark garments, we have to pre-treat. Okay, number one, making sure that you're um, focused on the water. The water is going to be the key issue when it comes to whether or not you're curing the shirt correctly. We did have a new customer that had a machine, and he ended up calling up, putting a tech ticket in, and said, "Hey, I was printing this order. I did 50 shirts or something, and I did 30 of them. They printed perfect, and then I went back 2 days later to finish up, and nothing's printing right." So sent over a picture, and basically it was a pre-treat problem. Just want to make sure everybody is aware you have to press shirts again to pull the moisture out of them because they will wick moisture over time. And it doesn't take very long. Sometimes it could be a half an hour to an hour, depending on the humidity and temperature in the room. So ultimately, you want to be aware of that. The shirt has to be 100% dry when you go to print on it for the pre-treat to do its job. It will not hold the ink on the surface if it is compromised with too much moisture. Okay, so that is a key to success when it comes to printing via DTG. Some people will turn around and under cure shirts and they'll be down and they'll go and try to print on them and they seem to be printing okay. So instead of fixing the problem, they'll just add more white ink. White ink is the most expensive part of the process when it comes to DTG, as well as pre-treat. If you have to put a lot of pre-treat on, if it's a very coarse weave fabric. That's the other thing you want to keep in mind. If you have a smooth surface fabric or a very tight weave and it looks smooth to the eye, then you're going to have to apply less pre-treat and less white ink to get a quality print. If you have a more coarse fabric or weave, like cotton cores, your standard just cotton shirts, the cheaper brands, things of that nature, they are going to require more pre-treat because there's more nooks and crannies that you're going to have to seal up to keep the white ink on the surface. Okay, so more pre-treat, more time in the heat press to make sure that you're pulling all the water out. If you pre-treat a shirt correctly, whether it's a smooth surface or a very rigid surface or a hoodie, sweatshirt, what have you, when it is cured and all the water's out, it should have a slightly stiff feel to the surface, kind of like if you starched a shirt. If it doesn't feel like that, you're probably going to have some issues. We have a great video on finding out how to get the proper amount of pre-treat onto a shirt. And we did tested, I think, 8 or 9 different manufacturers and basically showing everybody that each t-shirt, depending on the weave, the manufacturer is going to take a different amount of pre-treat, and it is a drastic change sometimes. Some shirts may require more than one pre-treat. And the reason is because there's contaminants in the chemicals and dyes that are residual in that specific fabric that are combating the absorption of pre-treat. And then they're going to cause issues when the ink goes down as well. So those are some key components you want to keep in mind. If you pre-treat a shirt correctly, it's all about putting the white ink down first and getting it down correctly to get a good quality print. The more coarse the weave, then the more white ink I got to put down. And there's a couple ways to approach that. And that's what we're going to be going through with Garment Creator today. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and go through that. As I mentioned on our last episode, we do have a Garment Creator overview that we did for the F2100 that goes through what all the buttons do and all that stuff, how to set up costing and what have you. That is a good one that you can go back to. Just understanding the difference between the F2100 and the 2270, other than some cleaning options and the machine and how it looks, the light inside. The big thing is the head is going to print a bigger stripe, and that allows for a faster print time as well as printing in a different resolution. So uh, that's going to be the main difference between that and its predecessor of the F2100. There are some enhancements in Garment Creator 2, and we'll go through those in just a moment. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. So you should see Garment Creator 2 on the screen at this point. Okay. Oops. Okay. Sorry about that. All right. So when it comes to Garment Creator, I have a couple different options on printing dark garments. Okay. Black colored t-shirt and then use garment black. So that's going to omit black ink, omit the white ink underneath the black ink, allowing me to save money if I'm printing on a black shirt. The other thing is there's going to be some instances where you have to do that. Otherwise, you're not going to get a good print. Okay, and I'll go through those examples. Dark colored t-shirt is for all colors and including some black. When it comes to certain types of prints that you're going to be doing that are going to require a lot more black detail. So that would be the time you'd want to use that, and I'll explain that. When it comes to just printing white type on a shirt, you could use the dark colored t-shirt white setting. I tend to just use the dark colored t-shirt standard and just stick with that myself, but because it has a couple different options for manipulating the white ink versus the dark colored t-shirt white, I only have 2 settings here. and I can utilize some of the other ones without getting into, the custom app part of it. Okay, so anyway, without further ado, I will go through and explain first the difference between the dark and the light by bringing up this here. Okay, so now hopefully you can see that pretty good. It is some samples here. You all can see that. I would say, Jay, you
Yep,
can see
looks
the
good. Yeah.
PDF, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
So this is a UGB or used garment black versus standard printing. And basically, I wanted to point out the difference between the F2100 and the 2270 and how it handles the ink. It does it a little bit different than the 2100. See on here, when I have a job with a lot of black, uh, detail in the tires, a lot of chromes, a lot of grays. I lose all my detail if I want the shirt to be my black. Okay, as you can see on the left side here. And this is using the standard default level 3 in Garment Creator for the 2100. Same with the one on the right for the standard print mode, adding the black ink back in. Now in the F2270, it actually does a much better job in the standard mode, um, versus, or I should say the UGB or used garment black mode, is it did up here on the one on the left. So the one on the left up here is the same as the one on the right down here, where you could see that you still have more detail. But on the other hand, you can see some of the colors pop a little bit more with the black ink, on this specific job. So is that the norm? I would say 95+% of everything you print on a black shirt, you want to print used garment black, okay, versus adding black ink in. Now, the next job is going to be the opposite. If I use black ink, I'm going to lose detail. I lose detail in the strings of the guitar, some of the detail in her top, the wristband, and there's just an overall modeling in the color there versus on the right-hand side. You can see, and these pictures look a lot better in person than they do after you've taken pictures with lighting and all that. They're going to look a little washed out, but these were both printed in the level 5. So they both have two whites, and then the color went down. Did a 30-second dry in between. If you're printing in anything up to level 4, you do not have to put a drying time if the shirt is 100% dry with the pre-treat. You can if you think you need to, but it just wastes time in production. I don't recommend it. I just make sure my shirts are 100% dry. That way I can just keep throwing shirts at the printer and keep going. But when you're printing with two whites and color, you have to allow time for that water to migrate. If too much water sits on the surface of the fabric with the ink, then the fibers may start lifting up. I might start having ink following the water into the fabric, which obviously I don't want. Again, I want that shirt to suck the water out, and that's why I want it to be dry so the ink can start setting up properly. And that's one of the biggest issues out there is how you're handling your shirts, making sure that they're dry when you start, making sure that you know that there's water in the ink and it needs to migrate to the fabric. And when I am printing this particular one, in order to actually um, get it to press without any anomalies like white specks or maybe fibers sticking up through, this shirt has to sit for about 5 to 10 minutes. Okay, when I'm printing normal stuff on the normal print modes, other than level 5 with the two white bases, I would just allow the shirt to sit for 3 to 5 minutes. So when it comes off the printer, I let them sit on a table for a couple minutes before I press them. If you have a conveyor dryer, you can go ahead and throw it right onto the dryer because the dryer moves slow enough to where the ink will start drying, and the ambient temperature that's slowly creeping up on that shirt as it comes into the dryer will pull the rest of the moisture out before it hits the hot temperature. So, but when you're using a heat press, you definitely need to wait a few minutes before you press them. That's the best way to handle the shirts. Okay. So basically, if you're pre-treating and curing when you start your production, then you have shirts sitting, you start juggling them in. The end of the day, you might have a couple shirts laying around you got to press to finish up your jobs because they've been sitting around for a few minutes. Okay. I'm not sure if anybody's asked any questions at this point. You see anything on there, Jay?
We're good so far. Question about
Okay.
pre-treated shirts, I already answered it.
Okay, great. All right. All right, so as far as unidirectional, that's another item on the garment creator, and I'll point out in the buttons where those are at. When would I want to do that? I use unidirectional for allowing ink to dry a little bit and allow the water to disperse into the fabric, as well as if I'm not printing on a very flat surface, printing on a hat, a shoe, over a seam, whether it be a jacket, a hoodie, a pocket. You want to run in unidirectional mode to make sure when you lower that platen just a little bit more, because it's going to be required, you're going to have a good quality print still be on the garment. Okay. Otherwise, it's going to get a little fuzzy, and we don't want that to happen. Okay. Just FYI on that. So when it comes to printing, you have, again, two print modes that you could use, a single white and a color mode, and then a two white and a color mode. Some shirts that are very coarse, you have no option but to just go with two whites and the color, and you're going to pay the maximum amount for that print. And also increase your production time for going through the printer a third time and having drying time at least 1 minute to 2 minutes, because I would do a 30 to 60-second drying time depending on what I'm printing on. But the white in the F2270 has been split. In the predecessor, there was a white control, but it did not work the same as the 2270. The white control in the 2270, I have a white base control and I have a white top control, and how they work and what they do. Okay, so the white base is going to cover pretty much everything. Okay, that is white and the base itself. When it does put a base down, okay, when I don't put any white at all or add any to it, and this is going to be all on the default of level 3, by the way, okay, you can see it puts down a grayscale white, okay, which is some lighter areas of coverage, some darker areas of coverage. And as I increase the white, it's not adding more ink per se. First, it actually redistributes the ink first and makes it more fluid and more covered. Because if I have a very coarse weave, a sweatshirt, a cotton core type shirt, I can't use this zero white base on the low end settings with one white pass, because it's going to be too open and the lighter coverage is going to get lost in the weave and it's not going to be enough. And I'm going to see the fabric showing through on my print. So I want to go and increase the white base. Increasing the white base by 25%, is that going to add a tremendous amount of money to my cost? It actually isn't. This is the easiest way to manipulate your white to get a better print without spending a lot of money. If I go to the double white, okay, scenario on level 5, my cost can go up on a large print minimum $1, okay, especially a design like this, if I'm at like 11 inches wide on a shirt, versus printing it in a lower mode like level 3 or 4, okay? So that would be the way I would focus first to get a better print, is just go to straight to increasing my white base to usually a minimum of 40% is where you need to be, or 50%. You can see here at 50, it's closing in and being more fluid. 75, it's pretty much solid. And then at 100, it is pretty much solid all the way across the board. There is a couple spots here because this is the distressed design. So if it were a more block colored design, the white would be solid. Okay, so that's going to give me a much better print. And surprising enough, even at 100%, it's not going to be as big of a cost difference as you may think. It probably would add on a large print, maybe 20 cents, 15 cents. In a lot of cases, it's going to be pretty negligible. I mean, like 15, uh, 10 cents and things of that nature. Okay. So definitely the way you want to approach items, if you're not getting a good print, then just go ahead and put a better white base down. If I'm doing a hoodie, if I'm doing a sweatshirt or any type of thick t-shirt, I'm going to automatically change my white base to at least a 40 or 50, as I mentioned. Okay. Now the white top, what does that do? That basically, the only thing it focuses on is solid white type. Okay. So basically, this is an example. This is the image. We have the level 3, the white top at 100%. Okay. This is at 0 over here on the left. Okay. Up on the top. And then this is at 100. You can clearly see that it put just a little bit more white down there, and that would be something that if you're printing a job and you have some white type on that job and everything looks great, but that white type, well, I can crank that white top up to 100 or 75 or something. I can tell you going from 0 to 25 to 50 to 75 to 100 incrementally is not that big of a deal as far as cost goes. So I would probably just go right to 75 or 100 right out of the gate, because it doesn't make that big of an impact as far as adding that much more ink. It's in small increments, even though the numbers are big. Okay. When it comes to the reduced white area, there is a default number there of 2, okay? And typically, I hear and see a lot of people out there ask, oh, should I change this to reduce my white because there's some white peeking out or something? I could tell you right out of the gate, this is an item that you're not going to be touching that often, probably a couple times a year, if at that. That's about how much I use it. The biggest issue or the biggest reason people use reduced white on a very frequent basis is because they load their shirts incorrectly. They will use the frame on the printer and they overstretch the shirt. When the white ink goes down, because there's water in it, it relaxes the fabric, and the shirt actually stretches a hair more because it gets damp. And then after that, the color goes down and you may see white ink peeking out on the top, the side, the bottom, or just on one part of the design. And that's most likely because the shirt was loaded incorrectly. There is videos on Epson's site that shows you how to properly load a shirt using the frame, as well as doing it without the frame, just using the grip pad. So here's one of a few times that I've ever used it. Going from the default of 2, which you could see above, there's loops in the handwriting, and they disappeared. And you can see down below here, going from the 2 to a 1, I was able to get the handwriting loops back. Okay, so just something to keep in mind there. The last thing that I wanted to point out is in the color settings at the bottom of your, and I'll go through that on the buttons of Garment Creator in just a moment, is striking. Striking allows you to use some of the pre-made settings that they have in there. and it helps you control different aspects of the printing as far as color without having to do anything else. So the striking of 4, this one's level, or actually it was level 5 on here. I'm not sure what happened there. I'm sorry. I must have typed that wrong. We got confused between the two machines. But anyway, you can see with the striking there, it controls the sun coming through the trees and keeps it from washing out the print and gives you a little bit more contrast with the other colors. So if I didn't use it, then this is what would happen with the print. It had a little bit more washed out because of the amount of sun coming through there on that specific print. Okay, so um, that's basically it on there. So now if I was going to, let me just bring that in. Okay. So again, on this one, it's best to use the dark colored shirt settings. Okay. And then we're going to focus on our basic, advanced, ink density, white management, and then the color settings that we just reviewed everything. So print quality, okay? Um, we have a total of 5 print qualities here. Not to be negative to the ability to have other print qualities, but level 2, level 1, you would really have to have the best quality shirts to even use them, pre-treated perfectly. Okay, otherwise they're not going to be ample as far as the amount of ink coverage on the white or the color itself. So that is why when you open Garment Creator, level 3 is the first one that pops up. If you have a good quality shirt, pre-treated correctly, you can go level 3 all day long without even looking back. Okay. So when it comes to the other ones, we can kind of just review what they are. On my white print quality, I do a 1200 by 600 DPI, which is an egg-shaped droplet of ink. The printer is going to go back and forth 4 times. That's what 4 passes means. And it's going to drop 4 drops of ink on the same spot and stack them like pancakes to create more ink density. Is that enough ink considering these droplets are smaller than you can see with the naked eye, to fill in all the gaps on that t-shirt? Possibly not, okay? As far as the 600 by 300 DPI for the color and doing only 2 passes, is that going to be enough ink density to get a vibrant print? Most likely not. So again, uh, could be in certain circumstances, but that's not one I would use typically. Level 2 takes me to my 1200 by 1200. The 4 plat passes plus the 1, okay? The 1 is going to be coming back when it does the color print or the color pass, and it's going to add that additional white ink that I added for my top. If I did not add anything, it still puts a little bit more white down, okay, when it comes back the second time, only on type. Okay, so just keep that in mind. The 2100 used to do a highlight white in general, which would give you more white ink on the type as well as any white area within the job. Okay, with the 2270, it doesn't do that. It actually puts a little bit more white down in the highlight areas when it does the first pass of white versus waiting for the second pass. It allows for the second pass to be focused on any type that you have on there or letters or words or what have you. Okay. As far as the color print quality, it's a 600 by 300, 2 passes. Uh, Could I add a little bit of ink density? Yes, I would want to do that. And if I did that, then I'm going to automatically go to level 3, okay, which is going to be 4 passes at 600 by 600. And then from there, so far, level 2 and level 3 do have the same white ink, okay, for the base. And then going to level 4, the only difference on level 4 is it actually goes 1200, 600. So it increases my resolution and does 8 passes of ink, getting a little bit more vibrancy on my color as well. Okay. But the white base is still the same. So 2, 3, and 4 are the same. So typically, if my main focus for printing is going to be to use 3 and 4. When would I want to use 4 over 3? Is if I have a lot more detail. The resolution is a little bit more on the image I'm trying to print, like a photograph or a picture of something, versus your standard type of silkscreen type job that has just blocks of color or some just basic screening. Okay. So again, that would be the first thing that I would do is jump to 4. As far as if you're trying to get a better print on a cheaper fabric, I typically would go to 4 immediately and just go 40 or 50% more white ink density, okay, for my base right here is put a 40 or something in there or a 50, and that's what I would go with. If I'm doing a hoodie, what have you, I'm also going to start out at a level 4 because I want to apply more ink to a thicker, more absorbent fabric. Okay. So, and then you have your level 5 is your final level, which is going to be 2 whites. Okay. So instead of having the top white and doing that extra pass, it's only going to do 2 whites. So if I add any ink density to my top or my base, it's going to throw it in on both those passes and divide it between the two. Okay. So the next thing is your print direction. We talked about that unidirection. You're printing over a pocket or a seam, or there's something that causes me to have to lower the platen. That's okay. Don't get nervous. Just go ahead and change it to unidirectional. It does print at half the speed because it only prints in one direction. Okay. You got color management here. You have this is something that the F2270 has over the 2100 as well, is you have the ability to use a vivid color profile. As you can look on the left-hand side, it's going to re-preview what I got on the screen there and change the color just slightly. Or I can use the standard auto profile that comes with Garment Creator. I can use a specific profile that I can create on my own, or I can just say, you know what, I don't want any adjustment to see what happens. Okay, which typically most people don't do. They leave it on auto or maybe come back and do the vivid. Uh, if you need to add drying time, as I mentioned, printing in level 5 is going to require a 30 or 60-second drying time minimum, depending on how much ink is going down. Okay. Color ink density and white top and base, as I mentioned to you before, if I'm doing a shirt and I get a good white, I mean, I tend to never add color ink density. I would just go up to the 8 passes of the 1200, 600 versus doing any additional density there and using level 3. Okay. You don't really need to do that. If you have a good white base, and it's been put down correctly with the right pre-treat, it's really at that point is going to give you a vibrant print right out of the gate because you got a nice base behind that color. Okay. Um, and then reduced white area in your management is here. Changing that from a 2 to a 1 is going to reduce the choke. If I need to increase the choke because it's peeking out, I would go a 3 or a 4. Now, keeping in mind, if it is an issue with a file, you will see that hairline all the way around, evenly distributed the entire image. If you don't see it around the entire image and it's in spotty locations, most likely you overstretch the shirt. Okay. Now you might want to look at this here as far as the white print, print or no print, under white. Typically, those are controls that are added, but we don't typically use them. One of them is going to turn off if I had my white type underneath. It would actually not print that. Or if I have a white base, it's not going to print my white base, which typically, if you're printing in dark mode, you need those things. So I never even touch those controls. Here's what we were talking about before on the striking. Like on this job, if I went ahead and just switched it to a 3, you can see that it just, adds a little punch to the colors. If I do a 1, one's going to be pushing all the black uh, to a darker spectrum. All the dark colors are going to get darker. It does make other colors more vibrant in the process. You can see the contrast is at 40, brightness is at -40. If I go to 2, it tones it down a little bit. Contrast still at 40, brightness at -20. Go to 3, brightness at 0, contrast still at 40. And then level 4 is going to, now as we go in this other direction, we're focusing on the highlights, as I showed you with the sun coming through the trees. Okay. And that's going to take the brightness to a +20 instead of a minus or a 0. And then I'm going to go to a +40 on the brightness, so you can see how it lightens up everything there. So let's say, I want to use this because I just want to add a little bit more punch to the color. I can create my own settings. Usually a -5 to 10 on the brightness works real well. Okay, and on the contrast, you can do a +5 to a +20 without doing too much.
Computer crashed, but everything's still going.
Okay.
Try to get back in.
All right. So you could see that slight change there. If I go and increase it a little bit more, you can see that. Or even doing something subtle as like a 5 here, okay? And then I can just do a reset so you can see what the actual job looked like. So it definitely does add a little bit when you have a lot of bright colors. I do like to use it. And once you start playing with it a little bit, you'll kind of get used to it. Does this add cost to my print? No, it doesn't. It actually just manipulates the way that the colors are going to print overall. It's not adding any more ink. You're controlling that up here. The only time it's going to manipulate your cost is if you use one of the lower settings, level 2 or level 1, and you're in use garment black mode, because it's going to make black blacker and some of the darker colors move to the black spectrum, removing that ink, which would reduce your cost in the process. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing that and take a look here. I guess Jay actually got his computer crashed. It is still recording and we're still live. So I'm going to just go through. If anybody has any questions or things that they might want to cover, then we can do that at this time. So I'm going to kind of look through some of the questions that we have here. So Garment Creator 2 is not something that you can use with the F2100. Okay, it's only used for the 2270 and the 3070 printer. Okay, so the 2100, you'd still have to use the original Garment Creator, and if you're doing DTFs, you have to do the update and use an ICC profile to get the better color. Okay, with the Garment Creator 2, they've added the film option, which we're going to be covering in 2 weeks. and that is up here on the screen. I'm going to share my screen again so you can see it. Okay. Okay, so up here on the top, it does have the film option. So it automatically mirrors the image when you click on the film option, and you have other settings in here. So I'll be going through the settings on the film option next week, or not next week, in 2 weeks, and we can go ahead and get that done. Okay, if you want to tune in for that one. If you do have a 2100, by all means, you can always reach out to us for tech support. We can help you with any questions you have as well. Let me check a couple more of these questions here. First question, I think Mike for Hanes is selling dark pre-treated shirts. Are they worth it? To be honest with you, it's to each his own. It's based on the quality that you want to print. I'm finding that most of the pre-treated shirts out there are under pre-treated. There is maybe one brand out there, and I don't want to just focus on that in general or point out too many things in that realm. If you have more questions on that, it's probably best to just do a one-on-one call on a tech support, okay? And we can address specific garments. But the best way to do it would be to get a sample. And I would tell people apply a little bit of pre-treat on half the shirt. Just put parchment paper down, right down the center, apply a little bit more pre-treat to the one side, cure it. And if you get a better print with that extra pre-treat than you did without it, then that tells you there wasn't enough on there. Okay. So that would be, as far as the perfect tees are good for pre-treating and definitely worth it. Any type of combed ring spun, anything that's enzyme washed is going to be best because the dye and chemicals are rinsed out of the fabric. They're going to give you better results, especially on light garments when you're dealing with the light pre-treats and dealing with UV where there's discoloration, browning or yellowing or things of that nature. And I covered that a little bit in the light garment one that we did a week ago. Um, do, 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 do. Okay, as far as curing shirts, it is required to go 90 seconds on a light pressure, and also um, at 330 degrees to cure any shirt long term for the dark print mode, where you put white ink down first and then color ink. So definitely want to make sure that you're doing that. If you're using a dryer that's designed for DTG, you want to set your boost temperature and your running temperatures hot enough to where the ink is going to hit 330 degrees at the actual shirt level for a period of time as well. So in most cases, you need a donut thermometer to do that. And they do cost a couple $100 in some cases. So be aware of that. So basically on the black shirt, best settings to print a photographic design with the least amount of rubbery fill, I would say is level 4 on the 2270. Okay, just standard level 4, don't touch anything, just go with it. And it would be a level 5 on the F2100 if some people were still in here with that machine. All right, so didn't see any other questions there. And as far as curing, or wait, I guess another one just popped up. So clarifying the curing, yes, 90 seconds at 330 degrees. 338, 340. If you have cheap heat presses, not to bag on anybody, but they don't regulate the temperature very well. Once you put a shirt in there, they can drop 10, 15 degrees and then they have to heat back up. you have a good heat press, geonites, stalls, any ones that have a better heating element in there, the recovery weight rate is within a few seconds, like 10 seconds or 15 seconds. So it's not going to affect anything. So you can run right at 330. Lower temperature is better, obviously, because you don't want to burn any fabrics or discolor anything because of the dye or anything of that nature. Um, all right. As far as letting the shirt sit out a little bit and air dry prior to, what you're doing is allowing that moisture to migrate down to the fabric. If I have any water in the ink layers, especially if I have a layer of white go down, that water is going to go into the fabric. Another layer of white goes on top. That ink now has got to migrate through that first layer of ink into the fabric. Then I throw my color on top. That water has got to migrate through the two white layers into the fabric. Some people talk about hovering before pressing. That's a waste of time, ties up a heat press, and it's kind of counterproductive with the natural migration of water to the fabric. It's going to try to heat up the ink or warm it up to steam the ink off or the water off. And that's something that you're going to have to sit there and do as well. So it's an extra step. It's just better to let the shirt do its deal and let it sit on a table where I can keep working and printing more shirts. All right. Well, again, I guess um, Jay wasn't able to make it back in, but I thank you guys for your time. And in 2 weeks, we will have the DTF settings that we recommend and the best way to print a DTF and the things to focus on with that. Thanks again. And thank you for purchasing from Equipment Zone as well. If you need any help, I know he throws up, and they probably will at the end of the video. If you need to get a hold of anybody in sales or tech support, you can go online or shoot an email directly to someone, and I'm sure there will be that information up there as well as calling the office. Thanks again. You have a great day. Bye-bye. You just got in?
Yeah, literally, you just ended.
I just ended it.
All right. Well, we're still
All right.
recording, but thanks everybody. Sorry for that. I have no idea in the middle of this, it just blew up on me. So there you go. Another great day in paradise. For those
You
that
got it.
appreciate you, Roy. Thanks again. Great stuff. Good info, of course. And I know lots of folks were going to be well fed on the settings and how to optimize everything. So appreciate your time.
Yeah, let's not make it complicated, people. And
That's
that's
easier
what,
said than done, right?
yeah, there's too many videos out there giving bad information. And ironically, we even have competitors out there that give out bad information as well.
Well, we don't have to pick on them too hard, but
Yeah, no,
appreciate
we
you
won't
for
do that.
clearing it up for us and everybody that's still tuned in. Thank you again for joining us for another webinar. And I think I heard you say, Roy, that you led them to where they can go for tech support if they need it. They could go to the website and fill out a tech page, right?
Yep. Well, I told them that you will probably have that at the end of the video when it goes live on YouTube.
Yes, perfect.
All right.
Okay. Thanks, buddy.
Okay.
Appreciate you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.